when a cleaner discovered a crying baby. An incredible transformation unveiled in just 5 minutes. Clara wiped the sweat from her brow as she polished the mahogany dining table, a meticulous routine in a life where everything depended on her ability to remain unnoticed. Each day she scrubbed floors and dusted shelves in homes far wealthier than hers, the opulence around her a stark reminder of her own struggles. She could hear the laughter of children beyond the spacious windows, sounds that twisted in her stomach like knots, laughter that was absent in her own life, drowned out by the weight of bills and a growing list of obligations. As she returned to her task, she forced herself to ignore the creeping feeling of invisibility. It'd been her close companion for years. Suddenly, a muffled cry broke through the tension. Heart racing, Clara froze, her mind racing with possibilities. The sound came from the large, ornate closet at the end of the room. Confusion gripped her. Was it a pet? An artifact of the family's lavish lifestyle? Each hesitant step toward the closet felt like a countdown, each moment stretching unnaturally. She opened the door, and her breath caught. There, swaddled in a thin, tattered blanket, was a baby, barely days old. The intensity of the situation washed over her like a cold wave, blurring the lines of right and wrong. Clara's heart swelled and shattered in the same breath. The child before her was stripped of love and protection, so vulnerable and innocent. A mirror held up to her childhood, a life of isolation buried deep inside, the nights spent longing for comfort, the constant yearning for someone to see her. The decision she faced coiled around her mind like a serpent. Call the authorities? An act of selflessness, yet with echoes of her past whispered caution. Instead, she could take the baby home, giving him the love she never had. But with that thought came the agonizing fear of what such an act would mean for both of them. Before she could settle into her thoughts, doubt pierced her resolve. Was she truly rescuing this child, or merely dragging herself deeper into a perilous situation? Clara's mind spiraled. The baby represented possibility, but also danger, the very threat that could shatter her world. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Shaky breaths filled the silence as Clara placed her hands around the baby, warmth flooding her as she imagined a home filled with laughter, a chance to rewrite her story.
But doubt loomed larger than her hope. The community had never been kind. Whispers followed her as she scrubbed floors, judgment casting long shadows over her intentions. The thought of losing Lily, her only solace, twisted like a dagger in her gut. Clara grappled with the impossible: protect this life or risk losing everything. As she cradled the baby in her arms, a distant siren wailed, each note a reminder of the clock ticking. Time was slipping away. What was she doing? The stakes had never been clearer. The balance between familial love and the weight of her decisions pressed against her chest like a stone. Could she really risk it all over again? The air crackled with tension as she faced the impending storm, the desperate cry of hope trapped between what she wanted and what the world expected. Would she dare to embrace the unknown, or would she crumble under the weight of her own fears? Clara's heart raced as the siren faded into the distance, leaving a disconcerting silence that enveloped her like a thick fog. The baby's tiny features stirred something deep within her, a yearning, a longing for connection that had evaded her throughout her life. She rocked the child gently, a primal instinct emerging. In that fleeting moment, the fear of consequence shifted, replaced by an unexpected surge of determination. Her world of anonymity crumbled under the weight of a new reality. Clara questioned every facet of her identity, grappling with the sensation of newfound power. This child, her promise of tenderness, could allow her to forge a family of her own. As she navigated these swirling thoughts, an underlying truth began to crystallize. The act of nurturing someone might give her the visibility she had always craved. But the stakes were higher than simple love. Clara could envision judgment, the intrusive voices that had haunted her since childhood. The possibility of being seen as an unfit mother loomed ominously. The risk of social services knocking on her door sent chills down her spine. She imagined the gleeful whispers of upscale families, the clicks of tongues, the cold shoulders in the neighborhood when they discovered a woman from so far beneath them had dared intervene in a privileged life. Yet the pull of the baby, of an opportunity to shatter the confines of her existence, continued to lure her. Their fragile connection ignited a promise she never thought possible. She could be more than a cleaner, more than a shadow in the lives of the affluent. With each heartbeat, she ventured closer to a personal revelation that could redefine her sense of self-worth. Clara's mind whirled as she weighed practicalities. She considered the logistics. The baby needed food, shelter, and love in a world that demanded perfection. Her tiny, nearly empty one-bedroom apartment felt suffocating at the thought of accommodating another soul. Faint memories flashed before her mother's frantic efforts and eventual failure to provide a loving home.
Could she succeed where her past had inevitably faltered? Action pulsed through her. Clara set down the baby, carefully adjusting his blanket one last time before moving toward the kitchen. She had enough for a small, simple meal, a meager offering, but perhaps it was a foundation. With a rapid rhythm, she chopped vegetables, allowing determination to drown the sounds of doubt. Every slice released a surge of purpose. With each movement, she built a semblance of stability. But just as Clara stirred her makeshift broth, a sound crystallized in the air. Footsteps. Her heart sank as the reality of her choices twisted in her gut. Could it be the family returning home? Sweat trickled down her back as she raced against her own mind. She had to decide, continue toward a moment of potential fulfillment, or throw the baby back into the uncertainty of his origins. Each step toward the door stretched like the taut string of a bow. Clara felt the pressure mounting, wrestling with a primal instinct to protect what was hers, while knowing full well the consequences of exposing her choice. Behind her, the baby cooed softly, blissfully ignorant of the chaos weaving its way through the space around them. She scolded herself for hesitating. What had she ever been, if not a fighter? Taking a deep breath, Clara opened the door, tensing as the cool air rushed in. It was time to confront the reality of her actions. As she stepped out into the unknown, the haunting echo of laughter from the children beyond the windows seeped deep into her bones. She needed to summon a self that hadn't existed before today. And deep down, Clara understood that the moment for her transformation arrived now, regardless of the outcome. But in the back of her mind loomed a thought, heavy like lead. Would she regret this decision? The question echoed like a whisper, unsettling and relentless, as she stepped further into a world brimming with uncertainty. What awaited her on the other side? Clara stepped into the cool evening air, her senses heightened. Each rustle of leaves and whispering wind seemed magnified, punctuating the enveloping silence. She hugged her arms around herself, shielding against the chill that was intensifying with the uncertainty of her decision. There was no turning back now. Behind her lay the safety of the familiar, the stark walls of her apartment now a fortress of solitude. Ahead, the unpredictable world stretched open like uncharted territory waiting for her exploration. The baby nestled securely in her arms felt like a bundle of responsibility and hope. She glanced around, taking in the sprawling grounds of the upscale neighborhood. The manicured lawns and grand homes towered over her, remnants of the world she barely belonged to. Each window glimmered with life, laughter echoing within those walls, a sound both beautiful and painful. Clara tightened her grip on the baby, resolve hardening in her chest. She had once been convinced that she didn't deserve any sound but the scornful whispers of disdain. Where to go now? An image flickered in her mind of a nearby park, a space filled with families, mothers pushing strollers, fathers tying shoelaces, children darting joyfully through the grass. It offered an escape from judgment and scrutiny, a sanctuary where a new identity could be explored. For once, she could play the role of caretaker without the oppressive gaze of the world weighing heavily on her. She began to walk, her steps driven by an impulsive determination, instinctively taking her to the park. With each step, Clara felt the mind's grip of fear loosening, replaced instead by a sense of anonymous courage. She blended into the shadows, where the rich aroma of blooming flowers mixed with the distant laughter of children. She could almost pretend she belonged, if only momentarily, as the warmth of spring surrounded her. She seated herself on a bench, catching her breath, and lowered her gaze to the baby, whose bright eyes were now wide open, filled with curiosity. "I have no idea what I'm doing," she whispered, marveling at the weight of his tiny life in her hands. In that instant, the fear began to shift. This was not merely a burden, but an uncharted path to her own evolution. Clara measured her actions, recalling how her mother had always worn a mask of competence, even in moments of uncertainty. Perhaps that was the key. She could adopt that guise, embody that confidence, at least for a little while. Clara looked around, taking in the interactions of mothers and their children. She noted the way they attended to their little ones with gentle authority, the way they maneuvered with practiced ease through the complexities of parenting. Here was an opportunity, not just to care for the infant, but to learn.
The playground, alive with the laughter of children, felt like a fountain of knowledge waiting to be tapped instead of an arena of judgment. A mother passed by, her carefree demeanor setting Clara's mind racing. What if she reached out? What if she could forge a connection, however fleeting? The thought sent a thrill coursing through her, pushing at the boundaries of her fear. Was she ready to break the barriers of isolation? Before she could overthink it, she called out, "Excuse me." The words were shaky but loud enough to carry over the laughter that danced with the wind. The mother turned, curiosity sparkling in her eyes. Clara's heart pounded. A last-minute hesitation gripped her thoughts. In this moment, everything hung in the balance. Would she find acceptance, or would rejection loom again, ready to ensnare her? Clara took a deep breath, pushing through the uncertainty, bracing herself for the possibility of both camaraderie and confrontation. With the desire to connect outweigh the echoes of her past that threatened to pull her back into obscurity. What if she doesn't understand?
Clara thought, feeling the tension pulse in her veins. Could she face whatever would come next? As the young mother approached, open and smiling, Clara realized she was not just stepping into a new experience. She was inching toward a transformation that could redefine her very essence. Would this single moment of courage become the catalyst she so desperately needed to shatter the chains of her old self? Clara's pulse quickened as the young mother came closer, her smile a radiant invitation. The moment felt suspended in time, a delicate intersection of possibility and fear. Clara searched for words, but found herself entangled in the webs of her own insecurities. "Hi," the mother said warmly, her voice smooth as honey. "What a sweet baby you have." The phrase was a lifeline, nudging Clara to speak, but doubt seeped into her mind like a slow poison. "Thank you. He's just a few weeks old," she managed to articulate, the words tumbling out awkwardly. The other woman leaned down, her eyes sparkling with genuine interest. "He's adorable. Are you new to the area?" Each question felt like a thread, weaving Clara closer into a community that she had long viewed from the outside. Yes, very new. I'm Clara," she introduced herself, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. "I'm Lily," the mother replied, straightening up, errands on her hips. "We moved here last summer. It took me a while to adjust, but really, this neighborhood grows on you once you start meeting people." A simple statement, yet for Clara it was a revelation. Meeting people. It felt daunting, but necessary. Perhaps Lily held the key to unlocking her own potential for connection. "Do you come here often?" Clara asked, searching for a way to prolong this tentative interaction. "Most afternoons. My little one loves the swings, and to make new friends." A spark ignited within Clara. Making a new friend didn't seem as impossible when the prospect was so tangible. The idea of bringing her walls down, even just a little, lit a fire of determination in her chest. Maybe here, in this park, she could start to reconstruct the shattered pieces of her self-worth. As she glanced at the baby in her arms, it dawned on Clara that she was no longer just a caretaker. In this scenario, she was a participant, invited to be part of something larger than her insecurity. This realization flourished alongside her courage, the intertwining giving her newfound strength. "What do you think has made it easier for you to meet people?" Clara managed to ask, her voice steadier now. Lily's expression grew contemplative. "Honestly, being open. I used to wait for people to approach me. Then I realized I needed to show up for myself. You have to put out your energy to attract positive responses." Clara absorbed the words, feeling a flicker of resonance with the insight. Perhaps she'd been locked into the idea that she was unworthy of connection, merely a spectator in the lives of others. But if she truly showed up, pushing past the thorns of fear, maybe she could be more. "What if I'm not good enough?" she thought, her mind spiraling with doubt. However, the raw honesty in Lily's eyes served as a balm against her insecurities. "But what if I am?" she countered internally, a small rebellious voice whispering potential. "Would you like to join us for a playdate sometime? I can share tips on the local parks," Lily offered, genuine warmth radiating from her. A tumult of emotions whirled inside Clara, but she couldn't miss the opportunity. "I'd love that," she said, the words spilling out before the weight of her doubts could smother them. In that simple exchange, something began to shift within Clara. The hesitant, fearful woman who walked into the park felt layers of uncertainty peeling away, revealing a woman eager to embrace her new reality. This was a pivotal moment, one where connection became not just an option, but an impetus for growth and rediscovery. As Clara watched Lily walk away, a kernel of hope blossomed. Perhaps this was just the beginning of uncovering her hidden capabilities. The ground beneath her had started to shift, making room for a future she had only begun to imagine. But the tension remained, echoing softly in the recesses of her thoughts. Could she sustain this newfound connection?
What other dimensions of her identity might she explore with each new interaction? Clara's heart raced as she considered the next step. There was a stirring within her, and she knew a greater challenge awaited. Would she take that next brave leap into the unknown? Clara returned home that evening, buoyed by the encounter with Lily, but also grappling with unease. The weight of uncertainty pressed upon her chest. As she settled on the couch, she cradled her baby, the soft sighs of his breaths grounding her scattered thoughts. The walls of her small apartment felt as if they were closing in, highlighting the solitude she had accepted for too long. She replayed their conversation in her mind, the warmth of Lily's presence mingling with the chill of her own lingering self-doubt. Being open, she whispered to herself, recalling Lily's words. Could it really be that simple? Her mind churned as she examined the possibility of vulnerability, a territory she had avoided out of fear. What if she reached out, not just to Lily, but to others? The notion stirred conflicting emotions, fear of rejection battling the desire for connection. The next morning, Clara decided she would take a small step towards this openness. She pulled out her smartphone and opened a local parenting group's forum. The thought of sharing her experiences or reading others felt like dipping a toe into unknown waters. With a deep breath, she crafted a post, introducing herself and sharing her excitement about meeting new parents. Pressing the send button sent a jolt through her, an impulsive surge of bravery followed by a wave of anxiety.
Clara found herself checking the forum compulsively throughout the day. Each notification brought a spark of hope, then a rush of disappointment when the responses didn't come as swiftly as she'd imagined. The bruising reality of her prior interactions resurfaced. What if no one cared? The what-ifs clawed at her resolve, yet she fought back, imagining the smiles and camaraderie she had yearned for. She needed to give it time. By evening, responses began trickling in. Other parents enthusiastically welcomed her, sharing their own journeys and inviting her to upcoming playdates and meetups. Clara's heart swelled with an unfamiliar warmth, a blend of excitement and fear. Each message felt like a small triumph, a confirmation that she was inching towards a community she never thought possible. After putting the baby to bed, she reflected on these small victories. With every notification, she felt emboldened, like she was constructing a bridge over her internal chasm, one message at a time. But as those moments of humility and success amassed, a darker thought crept in. With connection came the vulnerability of disappointment. If she reached out, what if she was rejected? Clara knew these thoughts didn't define her, yet they lingered like shadows. The next day, she decided to take another step by replying to a particularly engaging message about a nearby park gathering. She crafted her response carefully, threading in a balance of sincerity and enthusiasm. Before hitting send, she hesitated, second-guessing her choices. Would they really want her there? A pang of insecurity washed over her, but this time she pushed through. I deserve this, Clara muttered under her breath as she sent it off. The playdate was the following weekend, and the thought of attending filled her with both excitement and dread. What if the conversation waned and she was left standing awkwardly by the swings, just like back in high school? But she clung to the belief that she could learn to navigate social interaction like this new phase of motherhood, messily but with love and intention. As the day approached, a flurry of anxious thoughts took root. Clara sat in front of the mirror, examining the reflection staring back at her. This is not just about me anymore, she murmured, taking in the strength of her role as a mother, a force driving her to forge connections for her child's sake. Are you ready to show up? She asked herself, a challenging question echoing from deep within. With the upcoming playdate looming, the stakes felt higher than ever. Could she embrace her potential in a setting rife with expectations? The moment was drawing near, and Clara knew she stood at a precipice. All her experiences, fears, and newfound resolve would converge in an unprecedented testing ground. Would she face the fear of rejection once more, or would she discover something exhilarating that would propel her further into her journey? With the whisper of uncertainty still haunting her, she resolved to step boldly into the unknown. What awaited her at the gathering? A glimpse of connection or the pang of isolation? Clara's heart raced as she prepared herself, knowing she had to confront this pivotal moment. The day of the playdate arrived, and Clara felt the familiar knot in her stomach tighten as she dressed herself and her baby with jittery fingers. Her mind repeated mantras as she applied a touch of mascara. You belong here. Just be yourself. Each affirmation was countered by a whisper of doubt, reminding her how easy it would be to retreat into her shell. The park was teeming with life. Laughter bubbled up from children running in gleeful abandon, while parents gestured emphatically, sharing tales of sleepless nights and parenting fails like badges of honor. Clara feared she was about to disrupt this harmony, like a rogue note out of tune. But the weight of her son, safely strapped to her chest in a carrier, urged her forward. She envisioned him engaging with other children, laughing and learning. Her heart danced with a fierce longing for that. Clara approached the gathering slowly, positioning herself at the edge of the group while maintaining a polite distance. She observed conversations, mothers exchanging tips on diapering, fathers sharing anecdotes about teething. They appeared deep in discussion, yet no one seemed to notice her quiet entrance. The familiar feelings of isolation surfaced. She could almost predict her retreat back into obscurity, slipping seamlessly back into the anonymity of her apartment. What am I doing here, she thought, the surface certainty of her courage skimming her deeper fears. But then her son stirred, cooing softly. The sound jolted Clara out of her spiral. Focus on him, she instructed herself, pulling her shoulders back. The transformation in her internal dialogue shifted. Perhaps she wasn't here merely for herself, but to inspire the opportunity for her child to explore connection. That realization ignited a spark. Taking a deep breath, Clara ventured forward, her feet now confiding in the grass. "Hey, can I join you?" she asked, her voice steady despite the tremble in her hands. The group turned, interest piqued by her warmth and vulnerability. "Absolutely. We were just talking about sleep schedules," one woman offered, gesturing for her to sit. Clara chuckled nervously, settling onto the grass as the others introduced themselves. Their names whirled in her head, turning into a kaleidoscope of possibilities. They swapped stories, her laughter mingling with theirs, a sweet sound that reminded her of the life just outside her apartment walls. Clara discovered moments of brilliance within the conversation. She shared her own experiences, authentic and relatable. For the first time in what felt like ages, the connection she sought emerged, delicate yet vibrant.
Yet, as Clara mingled, a familiar vine of anxiety curled around her thoughts. What if her stories elicited sympathy rather than understanding? The reluctance to make herself vulnerable buzzed beneath her skin. She had opened up, but would they genuinely respond? Those doubts flared momentarily, causing a fleeting ache. But then, as if sensing Clara's inner turmoil, one of the parents leaned closer and gently shared her own struggles. In that moment, vulnerability became tangible, an invitation rather than a risk. Clara felt a buoy of camaraderie emerge, surging through her like a newfound strength. The conversation shifted as one mother voiced a similar fear of isolation before finding herself in this very group. Clara's heart thudded. The reality was not just her burden, but a shared experience that ignited waves of possibility. By the time the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Clara realized she had transformed. The gathering had not just been a superficial meetup, it had reshaped her sense of self. For too long she'd filled the role of the observer. Now she was a participant, wrapped in the vibrant tapestry of shared narratives. "Do you think we could do this every week?" she found herself asking, her voice ringing with unexpected genuineness. The response was a chorus of enthusiastic agreement that made her feel buoyant. As she gathered her belongings and prepared to leave, Clara glanced at her son, now peaceful in the sleep against her chest. Her heart swelled with pride. She expanded not just for herself, but for the little life she nurtured. She turned towards the exit when an unexpected voice called out. "I really loved what you shared today, Clara," the woman from earlier said. "Could I get your number? I'd love to chat more." In that moment, the blend of hope and fear merged into something potent. She was presented with an opportunity, a chance to cultivate something deeper. Her throat tightened with emotion as she met the woman's gaze, realizing that she stood on the precipice of yet another possible connection. "Of course," Clara responded, her heart racing. Was this the turning point she had hoped for, or merely the beginning of yet another daunting challenge? The air thrummed with the promise of possibilities as Clara stepped from the safety of the gathering into the evening twilight, emboldened but tethered by the ever-present specter of self-doubt. But perhaps this time she was ready to confront it head-on. What would this new friendship demand of her? Would she truly dare to leap again? The following weeks stretched like eternity as Clara anticipated her next meetup with the group at the park. She rehearsed her thoughts, nervous energy forming a rhythm in her mind. Her heart raced at the idea of deepening relationships, yet the flicker of doubt nagged at her. What if she faltered? What if her vulnerability unraveled everything she had begun to build?
"Just be yourself," she reiterated, but the words felt heavy with expectation. She painstakingly chose her outfit, wanting to project confidence while feeling the raw edge of her self-doubt. She swiped a hand over her baby's back, soothing him as she tucked a hair behind her ear, pondering whether to invest fully in this budding friendship. Arriving at the park, Clara experienced a surge of déjà vu. The parents were already immersed in cheerful exchanges, laughter weaving through the air. Taking a moment, she inhaled deeply, reassuring herself of her place among them. There was no going back. This was her opportunity to create a community for both herself and her son. "Hey, Clara!" A voice jolted her from her reverie, bringing her back to the present.
It was the same woman from last week, Kate, who had expressed a genuine interest in her stories. She waved with an enthusiasm that cut through Clara's mental fog. "Hi, so good to see you," Clara responded, the warmth in her voice surprising her. As they embraced for a moment, the sense of shared vulnerability returned, promising familiarity. The gathering had grown since their last meetup, and Clara settled among them, easing into the discussions of childcare tips. She observed how each parent opened up, navigating their own balance of humor and fear. What once felt like a daunting undertaking now began to mirror her own struggles, a recognition that dismantled her previous anxieties. Yet, as laughter surrounded her, Clara wrestled with a gnawing feeling. Each anecdote shared drew her closer to some revelation, yet she couldn't shake the dread of judgment. Maybe she was attempting to make too drastic a shift in her identity. Would admitting her struggles elicit sympathy again instead of the understanding she craved? "Tell us about your week, Clara," Kate prodded, her gaze encouraging. "Right," Clara's pulse quickened. "It was challenging." "Yeah?" Kate leaned forward, genuinely curious. Clara hesitated, her mind racing through the countless fragments of her week, her son's sleepless nights, her own existential doubts. What if her honesty exposed a fracture instead of building a bridge? In the sea of expectation from her peers, something pulled inside her, a deeper urging. These parents, in their strengths and vulnerabilities, presented a mirror. In that reflection, Clara saw not the image of a broken woman, but someone worthy of connections, someone potent with the desire to belong. This was the understanding she had missed. The realness in others prompted her to reconsider her stance. I've been feeling overwhelmed with all the changes," Clara finally admitted, her voice wavering but resolute. "I love being a mom, but some days I feel lost, like I'm barely keeping it together." Silence enveloped her as expectant eyes met hers, but it was not judgment she read. Instead, compassion sparked, and one by one, parents shared their trials, moments of doubt, overwhelming fear.
Clara's heart began to race, but this time it was not fear that fueled it, rather hope. There was no retreat into her shell. She was stepping boldly into a new paradigm. The conversation deepened as she absorbed their stories, each tale offering a thread for her to hold on to. They were forging a bond not because of perfection, but through the shared understanding of the struggle. Clara realized she held a power within to transform her fears into a tool for connection and growth. As the hours slipped away, Clara's energy surged. With every laugh and shared secret, the resonant pulse of community crystallized, anchoring her in the dynamics of this new life. "Can I greenlight a meetup at my place next time?" Clara chimed in, a determination bubbling forth. "Absolutely," came the chorus, exhilaration infused in their replies. As Clara gathered her son and they strolled home, a mixture of adrenaline and contentment coursed through her. Suddenly, the landscape of her life appeared transformed. Soft edges of possibility glimmered before her. She was ready to embrace this journey, to discover what authentic connection could unearth. Yet, as Clara stepped through her front door, darkness loomed just beyond. The familiar shadows of self-doubt and past failures encroached. Was she strong enough to shatter those chains, or would they bind her once again? The weight of her aspirations clashed against the lingering grips of anxiety. What awaited her in tomorrow's sunlight, and how would she confront whatever fears dared to return? Clara woke the next morning to sunlight spilling softly into their small living room, casting warm patterns on the floor. Today was the day, a moment she had anticipated since that vibrant meeting at the park. The excitement, mingled with a hint of trepidation, swelled inside her. As she prepared for the gathering, she couldn't shake the remnants of doubt that still loomed. She moved through her morning tasks automatically. The rhythm of her daily life was familiar. Coffee brewed, baby was changed, and toys shuffled around the room like echoes of her chaotic yet vibrant existence. Yet, amid this routine, Clara felt a pulsating need for change. Today, she intended not merely to host the gathering, but to reveal herself, vulnerabilities included. Clara glanced at herself in the mirror, scrutinizing still puffy eyes and a gentleness that seemed foreign. Was she truly ready to expose the depths of her struggles? Every trace of self-doubt felt like an anchor, holding her hostage to uncertainty. "Show up, Clara," she whispered to her reflection, recognizing that she needed to confront her introspective fears, this time not with a wall but with an open heart. As the parents arrived one by one, the energy in her apartment swelled. Smiles and laughter filled the space, and the warmth wrapped around Clara like a snug blanket. Each conversation entranced her, drawing her into a current of shared experiences and reaffirming her place within this tapestry of parenthood. But as laughter erupted over a story about teething troubles, Clara felt the familiar tug of insecurity, the urge to retreat, to withhold completely. Sweeping away those feelings of inadequacy didn't come easily, but neither did it feel impossible. Clara recognized a stirring strength within, a desire to truly connect with these people who had opened their hearts to her. "Okay, Clara," she thought,
her internal voice both soothing and demanding. With a deep breath, she leaned forward, ready to share. I've had some tough nights recently, sleeplessness, as you all have experienced, but it goes deeper than that. Conversations stilled, anticipation hovering palpably in the air. Clara pressed on, her heart racing. Sometimes I feel like the weight of my problems really sets me apart. I question myself, whether I'm even doing this right. For a fleeting moment, silence reigned. Clara felt exposed, laid bare, her insecurities hanging like delicate glass in the air. Clara, that's incredibly brave of you to say, Sarah, another mom, chimed in almost reverently. We all feel that. Heads around the room nodded in agreement, eyes reflecting solidarity rather than judgment. With each shared story, about frustration, loneliness, and the constant struggle to feel adequate, Clara no longer felt like an outsider. The barrier of perfection she had sought to uphold began crumbling, replaced by the collective strength of their mutual vulnerability. Their stories resonated with her own, and the ease of their dialogue filled the space around her with more than just words. It infused Clara with courage. As the sun began to lower in the sky, leaving golden hues lingering, an idea sparked within her. Would it be terribly odd, she pondered, her voice turning tentative yet firm, if we all shared something that helped us through the darkest moments? The group erupted in enthusiastic affirmations, and Clara felt a rush of warmth fill her at their eagerness. She had unknowingly become the catalyst for this exchange, each idea they shared building a bridge over the waters of their combined struggles. Yet beneath the surface of her newfound clarity, the shadow of her past still loomed, always lurking. That night, as Clara prepared for bed, the existential doubts trickled back, uninvited. Despite the joy and camaraderie she had fostered throughout the day, she faced the darkness of what it meant to confront oneself fully. Had she truly transformed, or was this a mere facade to hide behind? Were these just fleeting moments of connection, or could they form a foundational change within her? As she lay down, a simple truth began to crystallize. Vulnerability was her greatest strength, yet she still feared the weight of what lay ahead. Tomorrow was another opportunity, one that might either cultivate or perplex her journey.
Would she be able to sustain the momentum she had found today, or would she retreat into self-doubt yet again? The battle within continued, a voice whispering that her real journey was only beginning. What lay ahead was unknown but tantalizing, daring her to confront the deeper, unanswered questions of her identity. Clara's resolve began to wane as the dawn of a new day illuminated her room, fracturing her lingering uncertainties. The echoes of last night's gathering, punctuated with moments of shared vulnerability, still reverberated, yet they cast shadows of doubt over her decision to embrace this new path. Stretching tired limbs, she shook off the remnants of sleep, reminding herself that each morning offered a blank canvas begging for color. Tending to her baby felt like both a refuge and a test. She hummed softly as she prepared breakfast, the rhythmic cadence meant to soothe her frayed nerves. But beneath the surface, a tumult of emotions brewed. Visions of the conversations from the night before resurfaced, each story another thread woven into her emerging self-portrait. As Clara flipped pancakes, she was struck by one particularly poignant moment, how liberating it felt to speak her truth. Yet, as the aromas wafted through the air, so did whispers of her insecurities. Was she genuinely moving forward, or merely skirting around the edges of change? This question clawed at her, threatening to yank her back into the suffocating groove of self-doubt. As the day unfolded, she caught snippets of conversation amongst parents who interacted at parks or playgrounds, their lives painted in broad strokes of joy and flattened canvases of struggle. Clara noticed how they cast glances at her, their words often a blend of admiration and curiosity. "Really brave of you to share," they said. She smiled, yet internally cringed at the thought of being the center of attention for a narrative that felt to her incomplete. Desperate to bridge this gap, she took a deep breath, seeking professional guidance. Clara began her search for workshops that focused on personal development. The thought of standing in front of a group to share not only her triumphs but also her shortcomings exhilarated her. It was a step toward authenticity, a chance to extend her newly minted perspective beyond the confines of her small apartment. But apprehension loomed. What if she encountered disinterest or disbelief? Or worse, what if they could see the cracks in her facade despite her effort to appear composed and insightful? Clara debated fervently whether to sign up or remain a prisoner to her fears and uncertainties. Then came a tipping point. Stumbling across a local meetup titled Finding Your Voice, Writing and Sharing Truth, Clara felt an involuntary pull. Her heart raced as she absorbed the essence of the promotional material that spoke to her need for connection through articulation of experiences. Could this be the nudge she needed to propel her further?
With each click of the keyboard, she sensed an awakening. Would she dare to share the shadows of her past, the chinks in her armor that often screamed of failure? This was no longer merely about her own journey. Perhaps it was an opportunity to contribute to the tapestry of collective stories she so admired. The moment she hit submit stirred something dormant within her, a surge of determination layered over her traditional caution. As the event approached, she knew the enormity of what lay ahead, not just speaking to a group, but immersing herself fully in the act of vulnerability again. Clara envisioned confronting the cascading waves of insecurity, the internal chatter that had held her back for so long. With a heart pounding like a drum in her chest, she reflected on the vulnerability that had become her ally. She wanted to harness that power and show others they too could embrace their truths, however messy they might appear. The idea of standing on a stage, an image she'd previously evaded, now seemed thrilling. But with the realization of her impending participation came a chilling thought. What if she stumbled in front of them? Thus began a familiar dance, flashes of enthusiasm intertwined with suffocating dread. As she prepared her notes and replayed past victories in her mind, she sensed that climaxing both the excitement and the fear within her was crucial. Tomorrow would be more than just another day. It would be a decisive turn on her journey. Could she finally confront this stage, one that mirrored her life's tumultuous landscape? In that moment of reflection, a new wave of clarity emerged. This was more than about sharing. It was about transformation and readiness to reclaim her narrative as she forged ahead. Clara took a deep breath, whispering softly, "This is your opportunity to turn the anchor into wings." What awaited her on that stage felt uncertain, yet undeniably compelling, as she contemplated the ripples of change that could ensue from a single moment of courage. Would she fly, or would she falter? As Clara stood backstage, her heart raced with an exhilarating cocktail of excitement and apprehension. The room reverberated with the chatter of eager listeners, each one anticipating stories from fellow parents. Not long ago, she had been a woman trapped in the shadows of her insecurities. Now she was on the precipice of something profound. Today would mark the culmination of her hard-fought journey towards self-acceptance and community. Each breath she took steadied her resolve, grounding her in the reality of the moment. The memory of her past, the solitary hours spent cleaning affluent homes, hidden behind a veil of invisibility, had come rushing forth as she prepared these stories. Today she would shed that anonymity and unveil the truth of both her struggles and triumphs. She instinctively placed a protective arm around her baby, who was nestled comfortably in a carrier against her chest.
In that delicate moment, she found a renewed sense of purpose in her role, not just as a mother, but as a woman unafraid to share her vulnerability. When her name was called, Clara stepped into the spotlight, and the air seemed to ignite with anticipation. She could feel the eyes upon her, a mixture of admiration and curiosity. As her voice rang out, firm yet trembling, her words began to weave the narrative that had been trapped within her for far too long. Clara's heart lifted as she spoke authentically, recounting her harrowing experiences, balancing motherhood with the weight of isolation, self-doubt, and the search for belonging. Emboldened by the compassionate expressions on her audience's faces, she shared the fears that once held her hostage. The specter of her past failures seemed to dissolve under the warmth of her connections, unveiling a stronger woman who had finally learned to believe she was worthy of acceptance. Each story shared, intertwined with laughter and the occasional tear, lifted her from the shadows of her life and anchored her firmly amongst her peers. Throughout the presentation, Clara noticed the glimmers of empathy reflected back at her from the audience. She saw heads nodding, children fidgeting in their parents' laps, and the palpable understanding that transcended words. The connections she had craved were forming in real time, proof that vulnerability could indeed lead to camaraderie, something she had yearned for all her life. As Clara reached the conclusion of her talk, she felt a tidal wave of empowerment course through her veins. It was a transformation that transcended the moment, an unshakable resolve to keep showing up for herself, for her child, and for her newfound community. The applause that erupted felt like a validation of her journey, an affirmation that she was no longer defined by her fears. After the presentation, parents flocked to her, eager to share their own stories, with words of encouragement flowing freely. One woman even approached Clara to thank her for the bravery it took to share her truths. "You inspired me," she said, her eyes shimmering with new resolve.
I didn't realize I wasn't alone. In that moment, Clara fully grasped the weight of her transformation. There was joy in authentic storytelling, and each connection kindled possibilities unseen. Days turned into weeks, and Clara embraced every opportunity to nurture her relationships within this community. She hosted regular gatherings, became a comfort to others navigating their own trials, and cherished the growing bonds she had created. With every interaction, her confidence solidified, a potent mix of the supportive network she had carved out, her belief in her capability as a mother, and the vibrant person she was becoming. Standing at her kitchen counter one afternoon, Clara reflected on the profound changes that had unfolded.
Gone was the heartbeat of insecurity that once echoed through her life. In its place was a sense of agency and belonging. She meticulously prepared a meal, allowing the simple act to reaffirm her purpose. She felt competent in ways she had never anticipated, entering a local cooking competition, starting an online parenting blog, and even leading workshops for new parents. The old Clara, driven by an inability to connect, had been replaced by a resilient woman thriving in a community she now called her own. The laughter that filled her small home was not just sonorous. Each chuckle, each gleeful dance with her child vibrated with the energy of belonging. As she cradled her now lively baby in her arms, Clara knew she had transformed. She had conquered the darkness that loomed over her for so long, and had discovered that vulnerability was not her weakness. Rather, it had become her greatest strength. This realization resonated deeply as she committed herself to continuing her journey, a journey filled with shared stories, laughter, and love, echoing brightly in the hearts of those around her. As Clara opened the door to adventure, she felt liberation in her soul. This was her moment, no longer a keeper of solitude, but a beacon of hope and resilience, extending the invitation to all those seeking connection. With her heart full, she looked forward to the many moments yet to unfold, ready to embrace them without hesitation. Now, it's your turn. If you've experienced growth through your challenges, or found the strength to connect with others, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep these journeys alive. Comment and share your reactions and theories about Clara's transformation. And for all those friends who seek inspiration in their own lives, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second.